Hello. There we go. Now I'm working. All right. So, first order of business is I'd like to apologize for doing this again. For some reason, I had everything set up and it did a test run last week. It worked fine, but today it did not want to work correctly. So, I apologize for keeping everyone who is going to watch this waiting. I may have to correct the link and repost it. We'll see after I'm done. All right. So, welcome to today's presentation. My yoke is easy from Matthew 11:30. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Now, to get a better understanding of this, we're going to back up a few verses to verse 25. At the time, Yeshua said in response, I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and of earth, that you have hidden these things from the wise and discerning and revealed them to infants. Yes, Father, for this way was pleasing to you. All things have been handed over to me by my Father. No one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Now, Yeshua offers a public prayer in which he praises God in a manner that resembles Daniel 2:19 through 23. He once again affirms his close relationship with God as his Father. Additionally, he emphasizes God's authority as the ruler of the entire universe. In this particular section of the text that talks about rejection and judgment, it is interesting to see how Yeshua prays to his Father. He starts with a word of gratitude towards the Lord of heaven and earth, which shows his trust in God's plan, even when things don't seem to line up. God is the sovereign Lord of everything, and nothing, not even the rejection by many of his chosen people, will stop his ultimate plan for messianic redemption. It is quite ironic that God's plan includes the fact that he has hidden these things from the wise and intelligent and has revealed them to ordinary people. Yeshua takes pleasure in the Father's plan because it's in line with his own desires. This doesn't mean that God deliberately hid these truths from anyone, but it's just that the revelation of the Messiah doesn't come in the usual worldly manner. The things that the world often values, like education, money, power, etc., don't necessarily help a person to understand and perceive God's revelation. However, even an ordinary person with an open heart to the things of God can understand and receive redemption through Yeshua. As Yeshua prays, he expresses his joy knowing that God the Father has given him complete control over everything. Yeshua emphasizes his divine origin and claims to have unique knowledge of the God of Israel, as he was in the presence of the Father from eternity past. This makes it clear that Yeshua cannot be merely accepted as a good rabbi or prophet. The idea of free will is also evident in verses 20 through 24, where people are judged for the rejection of Yeshua, and in verses 28 through 30, where he offers salvation to those who respond positively. In fact, Scripture often combines both these themes of divine sovereignty and human responsibility without any sense of contradiction. Examples of this can be seen in passages such as Genesis 50:19 through 20, Leviticus 27, verse 7 through 8, Jeremiah 29:10 through 14, and Philippians 2:12 through 13. Throughout the history of the church, there have been attempts to reject or subordinate one of these two themes to the other, as seen in the Calvinist Arminian debate. However, both themes must be affirmed simultaneously in order to stay true to Scripture and faith experience. Most believers acknowledge that they freely choose to accept Messiah, but they also must recognize that key individuals and circumstances in their lives influenced their decision in ways they did not create. All who come to God do so by their own free will, but it is God who chooses and draws them to Him. It is important to note that a person cannot fully understand the Father unless Yeshua provides them with spiritual revelation. Simply believing in one's mind that they are a believer is not enough. One can only come to complete understanding of the Father through His Son, Yeshua, the Messiah. When one believes in Yeshua as the promised one, they receive a full understanding of all the previous covenants. Yeshua presents himself as the revelation of God and invites all those who feel the need to be rescued by God to come to him. This invitation is a warm and wonderful one. He makes it clear that we cannot find the way to God on our own, and that our human nature can make us reluctant to embrace the highest when we see it. Therefore, he calls on people to come to him and receive the rescue they need. If Yeshua is the only mediator between God and the Father and his people, then the call to follow him is easily understood. This call emphasizes helping those who are struggling and burdened. It is significant to note that this personal call comes right after the prayer that emphasizes God's sovereignty. In this section, we see both God's sovereignty and humanity's free will to respond to God side by side. And although it may seem like a contradiction to our thinking, it is perfectly consistent in God's mind. He is ultimately in control, yet humanity has the responsibility and freedom to respond to his call. It is also important to note that life is filled with challenges, but to those who follow Yeshua, he promises rest. This type of rest cannot be given or obtained through any external means. It can only be found by taking the yoke of Yeshua upon ourselves and becoming his partner. Yeshua not only desires to welcome back sinners, but also to train disciples. His invitation to come to me is followed by an invitation to take my yoke upon you. He acknowledges that his calling will come with his own set of challenges. He draws a comparison between the messianic life and a yoke, which brings to mind the image of a beast of burden fulfilling a student by pulling a plow. In a spiritual sense, this image is not unfamiliar to the rabbis as they spoke about the Ohal Torah, or the yoke of Torah. This yoke is said to be summarized in the Shema in Deuteronomy 6:4, which is recited 3 times daily in prayer. In Judaism, this is not considered a negative burden, but rather an acceptance of the yoke of the kingdom of Adonai, as stated in Tractate Barakot 2:5. In order to understand a particular verse, it is important to have some educational background on a few things. In the New Testament, Yeshua is often referred to as a rabbi, a Hebrew term that means teacher or master or great one, depending on the context. During the first century, this term wasn't associated with the title or profession of rabbi, which would come later and later be known as rabbinic Judaism. Instead, it was a title of respect given to teachers of the Torah, or in Greek, nomos, the law of Moses. Many of the great teachers of the Torah were called rabbis. An accurate name for a teacher in the first century would be sage. In the biblical text, Yeshua is referred to as a rabbi by various people, including his disciples, lawyers, ordinary people, and wealthy Pharisees, Sadducees. As a first century rabbi, Yeshua was known for his exceptional teaching abilities in regards to the Torah. His proficiency in teaching made him a sought-after rabbi, and he had many Talmidim who followed him to learn Torah. It was considered a great honor to be chosen by a rabbi, to be one of his disciples, and men would give up everything to follow their teacher's footsteps. Yeshua was a rabbi who was authorized to make new interpretations of the Torah or Jewish law. Rabbis with superior authority could make new interpretations and pass legal judgments regarding the teaching and application of the law in daily life. This authority was passed down by rabbis who had already received the laying on of hands known as the smakah from a rabbi of authority. Now, Yeshua is questioned about his authority in Matthew 21:23 through 27, Matthew 7:20 through 29, and Mark 1:21 through 27. The questioners knew that he had not been ordained by anyone and thus questioned how he had been given the authority to change the accepted interpretation of Scripture and pass legal judgments without having been given this authority. However, Yeshua's authority came from his Father, who sent him, as he told them. Now, in the past, rabbis used to invite people to learn and follow these scriptures or commandments mentioned in the Old Testament. This act was referred to as taking the yoke of Torah or the yoke of the kingdom of heaven. Now, I share this information with you to convey a crucial message. Rabbis like Yeshua, who taught with authority, introduced new interpretations of Scripture and passed legal judgments, would have a new yoke of Torah to pass down to their disciples. Yeshua's disciples would then assume his yoke, which signifies his teachings and instructions. Yeshua did not alter the commandments of his Father, but he followed his teaching, his Torah, perfectly. He had the yoke of Torah upon himself and correctly passed down the teachings and instructions of his Father to his disciples. His interpretation of his Father's teachings and instructions were impeccable. During the time of Yeshua, his disciples would take the yoke of Torah that the rabbi taught upon them. Now, this concept is very Hebraic and might be difficult for Westerners to understand. The idea was that disciples were bound to the rabbi just like two animals bound together. They would study the rabbi's every move and memorize everything he said. Yeshua taught that his yoke of Torah was easy and light, unlike the heavy and burdensome ones placed upon people by the Pharisees and Sadducees. He criticized them for taking traditions of men and making them doctrines of Adonai, thereby weighing people down with heavy burdens that they were not able to bear. The goal of the rabbis was to fulfill the Torah, to interpret Scripture in a way that would not lead to its correct obedience was considered destroying the law. Hence the whole conversation in Mark 7, when he criticized them for placing the teaching traditions of men as equal with Torah. It's not the Torah itself that was the issue. It was the fact that they were misusing it and destroying it. How many in the church today break the Torah for the sake of their tradition? Christmas, Easter, etc. Those are not found in Torah, nor were they ever instructed. Therefore, those who celebrate such traditions are violating Scripture. In Matthew 5:17-19, Yeshua used the word fulfill. The word fulfill means to carry out, to bring about, to completion. To bring a higher level of understanding, to accomplish. The Hebrew word for fulfill means to establish or uphold. So Yeshua came to carry out, to uphold, to establish the law, not to do away with it. He makes that quite clear, and so does Paul. He came with authority to show us the correct interpretation of Scripture, which had been corrupted by man. He taught the right interpretation and meaning of everything that his Father had commanded to Moses. Contrary to popular belief, he did not come to do away with the law. As I've said before, Scripture says so. Instead, he came to teach and interpret it correctly. The Torah is considered a positive and spiritual responsibility as Jews, as well as all true believers, try to fulfill his commands with love. Most Jews celebrate the Torah as a gift from God and not a negative burden. The Torah service is held every Shabbat and is a testament to this. Having a roadmap on how to lead a blessed life is a great gift. However, Yeshua emphasizes that he is not just calling Jews and others to take up the yoke of the Torah, but he exhorts his listeners to take up his yoke and learn from him how to walk in the spirit of shalom. Only by walking in close relationship with the one who is gentle and humble can we truly find rest for our souls. Yeshua, in a paradoxical statement, assures his disciples that his yoke is easy and his burden is light. Though there may be responsibilities and even hardships in living a messianic life, our Messiah promises to provide us with the strength and resources to emerge victorious. As we turn to him as the source of our spiritual power, our calling to follow Yeshua becomes effortless and easy. Carrying the yoke of Messiah's teaching, his kingdom, throughout our time on earth should be a joyous experience. Times of stress and frustration may arise, but we are reminded to seek Yeshua for his perspective and true shalom in our hearts. Let us strive to walk in his plan today.